Hi, and it is what 7:05. I want to call the meeting to order, and you know, I hope you all had a great summer. Welcome back, for the new school year, and the meeting is live streamed. And now, let us stand up for the land acknowledgement. Thank you.
We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples. Miigwech.
Thank you, Michelle. I think before we get into, the proposed item on the agenda, I want us to, reflect on the meeting norms that we received from, Lian to share with us, and we'll have to abide by those norms going forward because they are not new, and we have done so in the past. As I said in one of the emails that I sent today, we just want to reinforce them. And I understand that, because I'm one of the old members here, I understand that they may be outdated, but for now, they are what we have, and we may consider revising them. Thank you. And the next agenda item is review and approval of the agenda, the proposed agenda. And we did receive a draft agenda through the mail out, and anyone. Is it? Are you proposing the adoption?
Well, I have a question. So
No, let us have the agenda on the floor, and now you can ask your question.
I think, sorry.
Go ahead, Michelle.
The more appropriate line, protocol would be there is an agenda in front of people. It has been circulated. It took a great deal of work and time from the chair and staff to put this together in consideration. That's the one that's been circulated. It should be voted on first.
That's what I'm saying.
If it's not, but no, if it's not approved, then if it fails with approval at this point, then an alternative could be put forward. But discussion of an alternative should not happen until the vote on the existing agenda happens.
Thank you, Michelle. That's exactly what I wanted to bring that agenda to the floor before any question. You're moving to.
no, I just have a question. So thank you,
No,
Michelle.
I think that's let us follow the norm. As in, anyone is want to bring the agenda that you will receive through the mail out to the floor? Online?
It's Steve. I move to accept the agenda
Thank you.
as is.
Thank you, Steve. Any question? Comment? Yes, I recognize Melissa.
Thank you. I'm not sure where the comment.
Can you please time? Sorry, can you please time for 2 minutes, please? Sorry, Melissa. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Melissa. It's 2 minutes. Only once for
No.
this item.
I'll be brief and just follow up to some email comments. I'm just wondering if we can have more time for staff to answer questions which have been circulated by email, some of them since last June, and less time, less than 40 minutes, to do item number 1 on the agenda. So I think people need to know if that's feasible before they vote on this agenda, to know if there's a possibility for a different agenda. But I defer to you on the rules.
Are your speakers muted on your laptops?
Me?
He's hearing an echo.
We're having an echo. It's, yeah.
I don't have a laptop.
My audio is not on.
So you're muted.
Also, I think you need to stop the clock.
Any question, comment?
It's okay now.
Yeah, you're good.
I don't have a laptop.
It's mysterious.
Through you, Chair,
Yes,
may we vote on the agenda, please? It's on the floor. We need to vote.
okay. If there's any other comment, Steve moved to propose the agenda. Anyone seconding?
This is
Leo?
the original agenda.
Yes.
Yes, I second.
Leo second. I think that is, anyone against? Yes, I see Melissa. Online, is anyone against? 1, 2, 3, 4, adopted with one against. Thank you. And on the next item is declaration of possible conflict of interest. Does anyone has a conflict of interest with the item that will be discussed? Online? In the room? No, thank you. The next will be approval of the June minute. You also receive it from the mail out. Thanks to Leanne. And yes, I recognize Melissa. Time, please. Timer.
I'm just approving,
Go ahead, Melissa.
I'm just moving to approve the minutes.
Sorry.
I thought you asked for someone to move to approve the minutes, so I raised my hand to
Okay,
move to.
thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Anyone to second? Online? Steve, thank you, Steve. Is anyone against the approval of the minute from June? 1, 2, 3, approve. Thank you, everyone. And the next item will be the action log. And the action log, I think that is you all received the action log. I don't know if I'm looking at the staff, from some of the item, the log, pertaining to the data that were required. The February motion on data, I think there was, one batch for April. By April, another one for the fall. We are now in the fall. Can staff provide us with an update on that? There was the data on some of this, the indicator, that the motion that went to FUBEC.
Thanks, Jean-Paul. That motion that went said that if there was data that we hadn't provided, we would provide it in the fall. but we did provide the data that we collect, and the additional data that we don't collect, we didn't provide it in the spring or the fall.
The thing is, I recognize Nora. Yes, Nora.
So I just wanted,
Timer, please.
so I just wanted to clarify whether or not we're going to start collecting some of the data that we don't collect.
We started to collect data on modified days, and we had provided that data on 1 month, because at that point we had started just 1 month of data collection, so we'll continue with that. And we are going to be looking at how to collect other data. We haven't started that as yet or come up with a plan, but specifically I'm speaking about exclusions, that we feel that it is something we would like to do, but we haven't started that as yet.
And will you be sharing which data it is you'll be collecting on? So for example,
Sorry, I
there were
can't hear you.
reasons people gave about why some data couldn't be collected. And in aggregate, I don't agree that that's privacy information when you're giving us a large number. So there was, Jean-Paul and I attended the meeting. It was discussed that there was some data that breached privacy. I don't see how a total number of how many kids have a safety plan breaches any individual child's privacy. And at a board your size, I'm sure it's more than 16 kids. So my question will be, can you share with us which data you will begin to start collecting information on?
We would go back to that list, Nora, and we can be able to provide that at the next meeting. But we did provide information on number of students on safety plans. That was one of the data sets that we already provided. But we will take your recommendation under advisement and take it back to the team.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is to make it, for all this motion that related to data, can we? I don't know if staff can put this in a table. Some of the all this with the everything that was required under each of this motion and see what was provided, because when we say that all this data, and making sure that we follow up in a systematic way, please, if it's possible.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Staff would like to be collecting data that is associated with very clear goals that we have connected to our action plan that we build collaboratively with SEAC. Collecting data, Chair, and providing data can actually be a very time-consuming exercise that regrettably doesn't necessarily yield positive growth. So we are very keen to be collaborating with SEAC, to be developing goals, and to be thinking collaboratively about what data points we would use as proxies to showcase growth. I'll be happy to talk about this more deeply during my leadership report. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Director Sirowski. I think that is, I'm not saying that we add to what we already been doing. And I think that is, we spent time here, discussing all these recommendations, and we went to the board and it was agreed on, it's a report. I'm just asking us, to respect some of the time that we invested discussing on this and doing exactly what was required under these motions. That's only what I'm asking. Thank you very much.
We'll take that back and reflect on the actions we committed to and see if we can create a chart as you have suggested. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything to add?
If it's going to come up in the leadership report, I can wait till
Okay,
gives us
I think
more
that's what we're doing now is action log, and to make sure that everything is action log, is including some of this in the motion, we kind of covered. Thank you. The action item will be to have a chart, with all this motion, the data that will require where we are, in terms of updates, do we have them, and present that here. I mean, that we ask for the data to be presented to SEAC. Thank you. And in addition to that, okay, yes, David, our chair recognized David.
Thank you very much. Using my 2 minutes efficiently, I think it's great Louise said they've got to look at what data they could start to collect. I want to ask about data on refusals to admit because under the procedure that the board has confirmed is still in place, it requires executive council to receive quarterly reports on refusals to admit across the board. And it requires every principal who does refuse to admit to report it in writing. So nothing new needs to be collected. Could we get those quarterly reports from the past year? Back to you.
Okay. Thank you, David. And anything to reflect on that? Is it something that you will zoom into in your leadership report, Associate Director Sirosky?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Staff are going to have to look at that requirement. We are not aware that quarterly reports do exist, which would mean we don't believe that that data is there, but we will certainly take back and examine our practice. And if there are reports and they are public, they certainly can be shared with SIAC.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and the other, action item is, I think that is, as a SIAC member, was kind of a way to provide input to multi-year strategy plan renewal. I hope we all send some input to Liane to be forwarded to Superintendent Ado. That's only what I can see here. I'm looking at Liane. Did you receive any input from members, to be on the multi-year strategy plan? Well, that means, okay. And I think that's another, action item was the Sept PRC discussion. The motion is going to PPC. The report, the SIAC report, let us put it this way, in which the Sept PRC motion is included, is going to PPC this Wednesday, and the chair will be presenting the report to PPC. And the special education plan working group, there was also a request for membership for that working group. And it was also requested that, the update for this working group be a standing agenda item. I think that is, we can check that. And for the membership, please, I think we should probably see how this working group will be. We had more members, and including staff support. Yes, I see there, yes, staff support, yeah, okay, thank you. And also there was an action item from Associate Director Luis Sirisco, drop-in sessions. She will be providing an update. Okay, thank you. And the budget update, we left last year with, some with anxieties about cuts. I'm sure that you'll provide us with the status, whether we're going in a good footing for this new school year with regard to special education, a student with special needs in the system.
And are you?
I see transportation perfect. The first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, perfect. Everything, no problem. Okay. I think that is, those are the things that you probably share with us in your leadership report. And the budget working group membership as well. I know that Richard is joined virtually. I think, Richard, we should probably find a way, to recruit and start doing some work around this, budget working group up. and provide what updates on a monthly basis. Okay, those are some of the action items from the June meeting. Anything that I miss from the June meetings action items? And yes, Melissa, I recognize Melissa.
There were some questions circulated before the June meeting, which we didn't have time to address or answer in the June meeting. So I think those should get added into the action log.
Which was, please?
Well, I've repeated and detailed them a few times in email, but for example, SEAC had passed in April approval of using the PAC calendar, and then staff came back in June with a proposed Tdsb calendar, which is good, except there were significant differences. So we never had a chance to understand what the differences are. Some of it could be terminology, some of it could be not providing some things or providing different things. So the request was if staff could address it in a SEAC meeting, but if we don't have time or they're not prepared to do that right now, perhaps we could add to the action log that there be a small working group meeting sometime before the October SEAC meeting to understand what the differences are for whoever's interested.
I think that's exactly what. Thanks for bringing this up, Melissa, for clarification. I think that is why I said that some of the motion that we pass, we need to know where we are at with some of the requirement. And one thing that we expect staff to do with the PAC, adoption of the PAC calendar, and I think the Associate Director of Sirowski would address that in her leadership report, because we also have, action, action, planning, some of the planning, that she will share how we'll do it and to build the PAC on, PAC on SEAC calendar. Yes.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Again, collaboration is very important to staff. Staff reviewed the PAC on SEAC calendar, and it actually was put into the leadership report in June, and System Superintendent Nandy Palmer presented the calendar at that meeting. So from our perspective, Chair, respectfully, we consider this item closed. If there are questions, Melissa, we would be happy to talk with you offline to go through any personal questions you may have that you might have missed in June.
So our June meeting was very pressed for time, and we finished about an hour late. So I think that Nandy did mention it at high speed, but we didn't have a chance for any discussion. So I'm not saying the proposed TDSB calendar is good or bad. I'm just saying there's a lot of things on there that use different words and may or may not mean different things than the PAC calendar. And I would appreciate understanding it. Perhaps some other reps would also. So if we have an offline meeting on that to understand, that would be great. Sorry, so if we could add that just as a follow-up item for offline on the action log, and then you were asking, was there anything else from the June meeting that should be added to the action log? So there had also been a request to provide some catch-up data from 2022 to 2023. We didn't really receive any. So we didn't receive ONSYS data, we didn't receive EQAO data. Maybe we're not going to receive everything, but we don't have any data from last year. So again, if we could add that to the action log to receive it when staff has a chance, that would be great.
Yes, thank you, Melissa. I think that is, let us make it clear. It is already part of what you're asking here about all this data that we requested. No. Is we need to, staff already, note down this as an undertaking. And I think that is, we're expecting, I think the timeline is probably next meeting, October meeting, that we will hear from staff. Even for the PAC calendar, we'll probably have to, to highlight in, because it's already an action item, I think that is, we already have, now is, I'll hear what Nora need to
No,
say.
so-
No, sorry, Melissa, the rule is that you already speak twice for this item. I'll let
But
Nora,
I don't think you understand. So
I'll let Nora speak, please.
there's two separate items. One is a planning
I'll let
item.
Nora speak, please. Thank you very much.
So I think if staff are willing to talk offline with people who have concerns about that, then I think that we should be giving the opportunity to our committee to have that opportunity. So I think I would echo the request to have that meeting on the action log, that staff will meet with representatives who have concerns that there are holes in that calendar. If you don't agree, you don't agree. But I'm going to tell you, if the data is not there that supports our making decisions about how kids are served and how they're doing, I'm not sure how we do our job. That's all I'm saying. So if people have concerns and staff have offered, why is that a problem?
I think it's already noted that it will be part of, the action log will be updated. It's already noted.
Okay, great.
I took note, and I'm the one who maintained the action log.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
And we'll have to, that is exactly, it is an important point for each meeting here that we go through to make sure that we don't leave behind some things that we will discuss here. And because if we do that, we're not respectful of our time, because we spend time here discussing something, we need to follow up. Okay. Yes, that's the last thing, before we move on. Associate Director, seriously.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, respectfully, and I'll be raising this in my element of the leadership report, but in regards to the action log, Chair, just to be mindful that it is not a mechanism for SEAC to direct staff. The SEAC committee is an advisory committee, so I don't want to be setting false parameters of how we work together, that a request be noted in an action log and then staff action data. So it is something that grows from a report that we agree to is important for SEAC's role. So just to clarify that, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Associate Director Sirowski. Sorry if it is not clear the purpose of the action log here. If you see everything that I've listed here, if you go through the minute that we adopted, you'll see them. And the same thing about the Park on SEAC calendar. If all these motions, what is in there, what we put in the action log is something that we discussed here. And it's not something that is just come out of the blue. It is clear. That's the purpose of the action log, to capture all the action items, meeting by meetings. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And now, is there anyone, even online, has anything to add or comment on the action log before we move? I see none. Next item is the leadership report. And this item has, 40 minutes. Please, we'll make sure that we stay into the 40 minutes time. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tonight's leadership report highlights a number of items actually from the Tdsb SEAC Year at a Glance calendar that was created in alignment with the PACON SEAC calendar. Notably, for the month of October, we are presenting, or we have shared projected enrollment data for 22-23, which were sent as two attachments, one for elementary and one for secondary, and that was an item from PACON SEAC that we committed to sharing in September. Similarly, an update on the accessibility for Ontarians with disability, AODA, and we have included their Tdsb updates and highlights. A report will be published in December or by December 31st, 2023, that will detail more of the work that the Tdsb is doing around accessibility. Again, this was an item that came from the PACON SEAC calendar that we aligned with our Tdsb SEAC Year at a Glance calendar. And the TDSB does have quite a bit of work to do in this area, but we have been working diligently across departments, across schools, to ensure that we are falling in alignment with AODA requirements. One piece that I'd like to draw your attention to there in that part of the report is a quote taken from the report, Making TDSB School Buildings and Sites More Accessible. So while all new TDSB schools are designed to meet or exceed current accessibility standards, most of our older schools were not built with accessibility in mind. These sites include significant barriers to students, educators, parents, guardians, caregivers, and visitors with disabilities, including those who use mobility assistance devices and who have low vision or hearing. So from that, we see that we do have quite a bit of work to do, and that's not just for our schools, but also our school board buildings, including here at 5050 Yonge Street. We remain committed to AODA compliance, and we will continue working together, collaborating with departments and other organizations towards sharing and implementing best practices and strategies for AODA compliance. Another suggestion from PAC on SEAC was sharing professional activity day or PA day information, and so that's the next item that we have also adopted into the TDSB SEAC year at a glance, and included there is information for the first PA day of the year, which is on October 6th. And we will be having several sessions focused on using basic ABA strategies in the classroom, how to use alternative and augmentative communication devices, and a number of other sessions that we will be hosting for staff at all levels, support staff, teaching staff, as well as school and system leaders. We are focusing heavily on UDL, Universal Design for Learning, as well as DI, Differentiated Instruction, and of course, merging those with culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, because we recognize that students with special education needs have intersecting identities. The other items are not related to PAC on SEAC. These are additional updates that we wanted to provide. Our board has moved to Power School last year, and this year we will be moving special education and inclusion applications to Power School as well. In order to ensure a smooth transition, we will be having professional learning sessions for teachers who will be the primary users at the classroom level. And this changeover will happen in March 2024, but we have pilot schools currently that are using and trying out the applications, any special education applications, such as the individual learning plans, safety plans, individual education plans, and we will be providing professional learning, and the entire TDSB will switch over in March 2024. One of the highlights of the summer is always our summer programs that we offer, and we have a number of them that we've offered. Summer transition for students with high special education needs. Schools were able to choose if their staff wanted to over the summer, any transition programs for students transitioning from one class to another, from one school to another, or transitioning into the district. And they were able to come in, get to meet staff, get to visit the school. It was very successful, and we had quite a few schools participate in that. Special Education and Inclusion also hosted summer school programs in both integrated and congregated sites. We had 6 congregated sites, and they were all running programs around daily living, communication, and social skills, with, of course, some summer fun built into that. Education Community Partnership Program, ECPP, also ran a summer program in partnership with Sick Kids Hospital, Humber River Hospital, Youthdale, Turning Points, and many other partners that we have. And we were supporting these students across 13 programs. And students actually earn credits while receiving care and treatment for certain conditions, for example, addictions or eating disorders, other mental health needs. We also support students who are in the youth justice system. We also had summer skills development leisure programs for students with ASD, and these were held at 13 locations across the Tdsb for students in grades 4 to 10. We had a total of 197 participants. We always get positive reviews for this, and parents are very hopeful that we will continue this program into the next year. And finally, I'd like to close with our recognition days, or weeks or months. And September 9th was International FASD Awareness Day. And we promote all of these awareness days with our schools. Special Education and Inclusion started last year, a newsletter that's shared with all school-based staff, and that's caretakers, teachers, support staff, principals are asked to share with all of their staff so they get the information. And September 23rd is International Day of Sign Languages. At the bottom, we have June and cumulative IPRC data, and I know that Psych Services has also sent forward their data for the number of psych assessments completed. And I will pass it over to Louise to continue with the leadership report. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I noted 2 items for my portion of the leadership report. The first is the SEAC survey that I conducted in June, and then secondly, a discussion about the action plan. Members of SEAC, right now I'm going to be giving an oral report in regards to the survey with an assurance that this will be in the October agenda as a written report. Being new to the Toronto District School Board and participating in a few SEAC meetings, I was keen to understand how members felt that staff could be supporting SEAC and what structures that we could be putting in place to make this a very strong, highly functioning committee. Honestly, I've seen some SEACs run very, very functionally well and other SEACs not great. So I was really interested in hearing from members how we work together. And so 12 members of the SEAC committee participated either in small group discussion. We held 4, System Superintendent Palmer and I, and then we followed up as well as a written survey. So in the prompt, what are some ways staff can best support SEAC to fulfill its duties? I think what was almost in every discussion vehicle was the development and the adherence to a terms of reference. There is a real keen interest in having meetings run smoothly and for everyone to know how meetings are supposed to operate. So the use of a timer as an example, and understanding in that terms of reference how things get on an agenda was another item for discussion. There's a request to have better balance between staff reports and discussion among SEAC members to really elevate the expertise and the voice of parents through your associations to come onto the SEAC floor. A request for authentic engagement of SEAC members, so to really activate the A in advisory for when the board is thinking about actions to be put into place or policies to be put in place that the expertise of SEAC members is tapped into and informing the policy and the procedures that the board adopt. Request for increased rich discussions among SEAC members focused on its duties, being advisory. Again, wanting that really good balance between active conversation among SEAC members and reports from staff. Requests for staff presentations focused on improving student outcomes and sharing of rich and specific data. And I'll pick up that thread when I turn my discussion to the action plan and a request I have of SEAC members. Another really strong theme that came into conversation that really took the majority of time in discussions was a request for collaboration between staff and SEAC. We heard that members felt that the tone of our meetings was toxic and hostile. And I don't think that's anywhere where we want to be. The conversations really spoke about an aspirational relationship and work that we can engage in. There's so much work to do to be supporting our children. Because we're in a hybrid environment, a request was made for the discussion around the table to be focused and not forgetting online participants, and to be monitoring for hands raised, which sometimes can be difficult to see, and a thorough collaboration of new members. And I can certainly say that that is a frequent discussion between the chair and the vice chair and staff about setting a date. And you'll know the new Google repository is a direct response to bettering the sharing of information in a one-stop location for things to be posted. The next prompt was, what are the strengths of the committee and the way it functions? Universally, committees, members' expertise and passion was noted, and the incredible strength that each committee member holds in their connection to a much larger association and group of parents that have so much to share with us on the challenges and barriers our students face, and the ideas that we can action together to be making outcomes stronger for our students. The next prompt was, what ways can the committee enhance its practices? Again, terms of reference was noted that address motion development and is not last minute. So just knowing the sequence of how a committee of this sophistication operates. It was noted a request for everyone to be conducting ourselves with professionalism and not hostility towards staff members and trustees. SEAC members, I regret that we have, in those conversations, received a resignation notice, and the resignation was noted because the meeting was felt to be very frustrating and hostile, and the individual did not want to be in that environment. More than one member during our discussion groups noted that they're thinking about resigning and hoping that we can get to the point of collaboration. And I'm on a tangent here, but I will just say that staff are wholly committed to be partnering with you, developing that terms of reference, and doing really, really great work. There's so much to do. Another point was made to avoid personalization and examples and conduct towards others. Conducting meetings in the room and not on email was another repeated theme. Adhering to the time allotted, as many members cannot stay past extensions. An idea to develop a template for community reports, so that template is there, it's circulated well, and the committee can be thinking about whether individuals want to speak to their report or whether it's merely part of what is circulated to save time for that rich discussion. Training on how to add to agendas. Feedback, an idea was to provide feedback to associations when a member's conduct is not aligned with the board's code of conduct. Developing a deeper understanding of SEAC's advisory role, enhanced transparency. It was noted that there are members who are feeling that data is not forthcoming, it's not frequent enough, and repeated requests have to be made. And that certainly has been a continued theme for as long as I've been in this room. And I think that we can find a way through that once we agree upon what data is a good proxy for how we can be showing demonstrably stronger student success. Encouraging all voices to be heard and not just a few. So after these rich discussions, and I thank everyone who was able to participate, and please, if there's a SEAC member who wishes to share voice, please just send me an email and we can send that survey out to you again if you missed that opportunity and would like to add to this ongoing report. But some ideas through you, Chair, that I noted as draft suggestions, and I would like to provide an opportunity to receive feedback from the floor before this is formalized into a written report, because this is hopefully for the benefit of all of us. But I thought that we could absolutely develop and implement a terms of reference. I know that there was a previous committee, but that is a step forward for your consideration. Onboarding resources and training for members, that is something that we've actioned, and after we go through this first cycle, perhaps we can be thinking about how to better that. The adoption of a timer for speakers, clear perhaps steps for agenda development that's adhered to for individuals who may not know how that happens. The next suggestion really is connected to the action plan discussion that I would like to be suggesting through you, Chair. So this is what we found. I think this is a good baseline for us to be saying, who do we want to be as a team between SEAC members and staff? And I think if I were to summarize it, I think individuals are here to dedicate and volunteer their time because there's tremendous passion, often personal experience and lived experience for children with special education needs. And you have a very willing staff team that are also committed to those goals. I can see a pathway forward where we're always going to have to be responding to urgent items that happen. And staff can be pivoting in the month to be responding to urgent items. There is so much to do. An element of change management that I would just want to be being frank about is special education is complex. You don't need me to tell you that. In order to move a system as large as the Toronto District School Board with over 740 schools, 240,000 students, 18,000 staff, and I think I'm underestimating that. I think it might be 40,000 staff. We need to be smart about how we make change happen. And what I am proposing is that every year we collaboratively develop an action plan. And that action plan is revolving around themes. We develop action tasks and goals and data that we will be collaboratively gathering and watching to see whether our actions bear the fruit we expect. We don't want to be developing those themes solely. We would like to seek your advice as members of SEAC. So for consideration through you, Chair, I am wondering in our next agenda in October whether we dedicate some time to be deeply discussing and prioritizing the action areas. So between now and October, it would be tremendous if each SEAC member returned back to your association and to be simply engaging in discussion. And you could do that through survey, you could do that through a meeting. But if we all asked our membership, what are the greatest barriers or struggles your children, your families may be experiencing? And if your association, it will, I'm sure, be a rich discussion. But if you could describe those themes, and it might be words like transitions, it might be IEPs are not followed, it might be refusal to admit, exclusions, modified days. There's a multitude of elements that may be unique for the association that you represent. But I would ask you then to prioritize that list. So if you would engage in the conversation, have your association prioritize, and if we come together in October in a working session where we could share our data and try and prioritize as a TDSB SEAC what those 3 action themes are, and then we can start talking about the data that we have to see what our program and planning is like, and engage in rich discussion about the future that we both want and develop a path to make it happen and the data that we'll collect along the way. So then through time, staff will be, as part of our report to SEAC, responding and giving update on our joint plan. And when such time as we feel, okay, we've made good progress, we may want to go deeper, we may want to nominate another area. But I think this is really at the heart of PAC on SEAC. And it is certainly part of the agenda creation that asks for SEAC to be talking about the action plan. We've moved it way up through you, Chair, in discussion to say we'd love to engage in this October so that we can be developing this plan, and that it would be developed annually with you. So I'll conclude. That was a lot through you, Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Lois, for your report. I think that is before I look into, people who want to provide any feedback or comment. And my question, I have an overall question. You're saying that you will be asking, association or staff, SEAC members to go back and trying to see, some of the challenges that, the students or, the client, because some of them are the client, are facing toward the system. I think that is what we have done here in the past. That is, I'm looking back many years back. Usually at the beginning of the school year like this, we will have, staff coming from the transportation department coming, to say that, this is how we plan for the transportation to be smooth at the beginning of the school year, but we still facing some challenges. Please, if you hear this through your association or in the system, bear with us. We are working on it. That's something that, you may also consider, saying that, because I'm sure that before the beginning of the school year, you also went through this type of planning, Same thing with, some of this, data about, refusal to admit, some of the game that, there was a lot of game, many years back, to get some of the students with special needs out of the system, and through some of, collaboration with association, community members, we kind of push back and get some principal to get training, because sometimes it was happening because of lack of training. Send them to training, change, the way that some of the question about social education putting out in the recruitment, because I was part of the panel recruiting principal as a parent, those, candidate principal. Then those are some of the things that you may consider, trying to go back and say that, we plan for the year to begin this way, and this is how it's going, and using us as a kind of sounding board, to come and say, oh, this is what is happening in the system, and you compare that with what you had in your dashboard. I think that's something that you may consider. Thank you. And another thing that we also had in the past, we had a template for incidents. I think, Richard, who some of the old people here can tell that we had template from incident that will capture, some of the incident and bring it here. Not, ongoing incident, not past incident. When it's called, there was a template. Leanne can probably find that in the archive. Thank you. And now we go back to see, I recognize, Browan. Browan?
Yes, hello, thank you. I really appreciate actually that idea for the survey. I was on the Toronto Public Health Infant Hearing Program Committee for 2.5 years, and we ourselves as parents were invited to the committee to make changes within the infant hearing program. And that was one of the most productive things that we really did that actually had long-term gain. So I fully agree with that. What we used was a monkey survey, but we didn't use it just for, when you say associations, Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children is what I would represent. But I think it's important as a committee that we all take this and collaborate again together to see that we're not having different questions that could be the same. So we're not wasting time. I think this is a really good idea, but I think we also have to do it collaboratively and effectively. And I do think what was done in the past, like Jean-Paul said, would have been wonderful, but I think the past is also, I think we need to do things new. I find everything seems to go back to the past, but I don't really think I see any progress. So I would like to have something brand new where we have people sit down and really scope this out properly. So that's my feedback, and I'm really eager to do this for October, but I'd like to see it really dedicated in the time properly where people can sit down and also really get down to parents to talk to them about this, not just about from organizations who families have not been in the Tdsb for over 15 years, right now in the thick of it. So that's my feedback as a parent and representing Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children. And sorry, the other point, just to jump back, was also thank you for sharing the leadership updates. The only thing that I am still very concerned on behalf of Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children is that since COVID, we still have not had any group activities for socializing for mainstream deaf and hard of hearing children. That was something
Thank
that
you,
my
Bowen.
child, who is 6, but it's important. I just would like to have
Can
that
you wrap up, please?
brought. That's, I don't really like how that's being talked to me. I'm sorry, Jean-Paul. I think we just have to think about the tone and delivery. I don't know why I was cut off for just mentioning something that when it was about the leadership. I don't think it's a.
Sorry. Bronwyn, can you email that last piece?
Sure. Thank you.
Piece you mentioned.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Just a reminder that there is on the screen a timer for each member for their question. So it should be visible to everybody online as well as in the room.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. I recognize Nora.
And David, sorry, when David's coming.
I saw Nora first before. Nora.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I am looking forward to having common goals structured with staff, because I can appreciate how when requests for data is random, it's very frustrating and time consuming. Having said that, I also know some of the vehicles that you use to collect data are not capturing the realities either. So, when we talk about accessibility, and there's a whole section on building accessibility, there's way more to accessibility than just whether you can actually physically get through the door. It's about whether you can come every day. So things like refusal to admit, modified days, the busing's not set up, come and get your kid, don't come on this excursion, your EA is away, all of those really are amounting to an exclusion. Other children are coming to school and those kids aren't. So for me, I'm happy to have this common goal, but I think we're gonna have to have time structuring what is the meaning of exclusion? What are the meaning of some of these things? And then when we decide what the data is, I feel a little bit like part of the animosity, and I will own my bit about that, because I can get pretty heated. I feel like there's been a lack of transparency because you guys have a vested interest in trying to protect also your institution from accusations of human rights complaints and all those things. And it's not completely your fault. The funding is abysmal. It's a disaster. I totally can't imagine right now the multitude of situations you're all personally trying to handle where we are standing here trying to confront. But I feel like that having to sort of feel like we're managing when we don't have enough leads to complicity in oppression about our populations. And that's why I want it to be more transparent. I know you guys want that too, but you're also sort of, half protecting your colleagues, and I get it. But the reality is we need to know who can't get to school for whatever structural reason, and we need an accurate data about that.
Thank you, Nora.
If I may, through you, very briefly, thank you, Nora. I really invite you to let go of the animosity. It's not healthy for you, it's not healthy for us, and I'm just going to keep saying there's so much to do. I will tell you when we can't give you data, and I'll tell you why. We have to be realistic, so we are here saying let's talk about what we can collect, and when the ministry doesn't ask us to collect it, doesn't mean that we can't collect it. We just have to be thoughtful about the why and the how. Okay, so thank you for your partnership.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. 4 points. First, apropos of Bronwyn's comments, I'm going to go back to the past just because we can learn from it. We don't have to replicate it. But both the year before I was chair and the last year I was chair, we actually went around the table and I asked everyone, what are your priorities? And from that, we were able to distill a series of 4 or 5 major things that we focused our efforts on. But it was rolling because when there was an explosion of really bad busing, that took over. When there was a flood of emails just before our September meeting saying busing's really bad, we said, hey, move the other stuff aside, bring someone and tell us about it. So there's value to that. The second thing, which I think is really important, is look at the clock. We're here for 2 hours. I believe that the majority of the time, the substantial majority, should not be with people talking at us, but with us giving feedback. Now, I look at the first hour of our meeting, and I would say there may have been about 7 minutes of people other than the chair of our committee and staff talking to us. Now, I'm not saying staff shouldn't talk and the chair shouldn't have a say, don't get me wrong, but this is really lopsided. And if we are going to volunteer our time and either come in person or virtually, we got to have a chance to do the advising. That's what this committee is for, not just being talked at. And to the extent that these reports could have all been in writing and then we could have read them and then jumped right into this, that would have been helpful. Point number 3. Point number 3 is, and forgive me, Louise, but please don't tell disability advocates to let go of our animosity. We shouldn't be personalizing it, of course. But when I hear senior staff saying they didn't even know there was a requirement of quarterly reports on refusal to admit,
thank you, David.
I'm concerned.
Can you please email, the last piece of 3 and 4 to Leanne for consideration? Thank you.
Sure.
Now we have Diane.
Hi there. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. Timer's on, so I'll talk. So thank you very much. This was a kind of a little bit of a different meeting. I do appreciate, it sounds like a lot happened over the summer and maybe the month of September. A lot of stuff happened in leadership report and a lot of it for good, so that's great. Thank you for listening, Louise, in the discussions we had and taking action. I know there's a lot of stuff going on, some good stuff and some not so good. And with the number of emails and things I see, it is overwhelming with a ton of stuff. So I think the idea of what you proposed is really the only way. Great idea, but we have to go back to our associations figure it out, and because we can't do everything, but we need to prioritize what we can do, and we need to do it collaboratively. So thank you for that, and I'm totally in support of that.
Thank you.
Oh, done? Oh, okay. Didn't get to my point, but it's okay. I'll send the other one by email. That's fine.
Thank you. Is there anything?
I had 30 seconds?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that fast. Oh, okay. I'll look at the time. I'll use my other 30 seconds. Okay, last point then for my 30 seconds. Got to the point of the collaboration piece. My question was related to an item you mentioned earlier about the IEPs and the learning plans going on PowerSchool. Can you tell me how that would be different from what is happening now? Is that going to improve things? And if so, how will that improve things in an efficient way? So that's my burning question from your leadership report.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Anyone? Nandi? Okay,
Thanks. Hi, Diane. So the processes will stay the same. It's just a different platform that we're using called PowerSchool. And like I said, we have some pilot schools that are trying it out to work out any issues, but those would be more technical issues. But the processes are the same, the forms are the same. It's just on a different platform. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nandi. I recognize Richard. No.
Thank you. I don't know if my video is on or not. I can't see myself, so there we go. I am there. Quick one. Basically, I often hear that parents are regularly being told by staff at the school level, we don't have support at our school. And I'd like to see how we change the narrative with staff on that, as to say, if the staff feel they don't have the support at school, they come out and say instead, we can't support your child at our school because of the following items, and list them down so that we can address each of those items through meaningful communication with everybody. Because too often parents are led to believe not only does the school not have the support, but the support is not available to them. But I don't think that's what the intent is here, but it's very misleading. So hopefully we can look at how we change the narrative. If a child can't be supported in that school, I think the parent needs to get in writing from the school board, signed by the principal, why their child cannot be supported in the school and what support it is they cannot provide that child. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Anyone?
Sure.
Nandi?
Thanks so much for sharing that, and we hate to hear that. As shared last year with SEAC around the Spec Ed and Inclusion Annual Report, we have 4 focus areas that we will continue to focus on this year, one of which is changing mindsets and building capacity of system and school-based staff so that we don't have these words being said to families. And we know that Regulation 18198 also asks us to always look at placement in a regular class in a neighborhood school before we look at special education classes or whether in an integrated or congregated site. So we will continue to work on those pieces with staff. I would also say that if you're hearing comments such as these, to please have parents follow the parent concern protocol, to connect with their principal first. If the principal's the one that's saying that, hopefully not, they're to connect with their superintendent and then the executive superintendent so it can be addressed. Thanks so much.
Thanks. In all due respect, why should we have to waste everybody's time following the parent concern protocol if we can nip this in the bud right up front? And, what does it take to put a communication out to all staff saying, we just can't say, oh, sorry, we don't have support for your child in the school. Instead, saying that they must define what support is required for that child and what they cannot supply. I know we're working on this over time, but I think this needs to be dealt with immediately. And I don't think I'm the first person that's bringing this up or that's experiencing this from parents. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And we are doing that. I'm just saying that in case, as we're doing that, those comments are still being heard. I'm just giving another way as well to address it. But we have put out communication. We just presented to all new administrators in the summer, and they got that message loud and clear. We also went to every superintendent. We've gone to principals meetings, so we have been doing that. That was just a suggestion that if you're hearing through your association or your role, it's just a different way as well. instead of, it's more of a multi-pronged approach is what I'm suggesting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Eileen? Eileen, and then we have one more person, and we'll wrap up on Melissa. Steve, and then Melissa, I will close up. Steve?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you for the information. I do agree with Richard that the message must be sent out not just to new principals, but to all principals and all staff that Tdsb cannot be saying, should not be saying, is not allowed to be saying, we don't have the supports for your child, sorry. It's unacceptable. If there's a reason why some members of this committee and parents have an attitude towards the board that we're being asked to let go, that is one of the biggest. So in terms of collaboration, what we need as a committee is the board to actively tell all their staff that they cannot, should not do this, that they should be working for the students. And as a collaborative thing, SEAC and will continue to support parents to follow the route of principal, et cetera, et cetera. But until we get action from the board side, we will constantly be beating our heads against the wall and constantly be frustrated, as Nora is rightfully so to be, because requests we have for data, requests we have for psychological data, requests we have for changes in busing, for changing in the number of EAs and SNAs in schools, et cetera, just get repeated and repeated and repeated. And we constantly get told that, yes, we're working on collecting the data. Yes, we're working on getting this message out. But we don't see hard evidence that it's happening. So that would be great for us to receive through Leanne specifics on why this collaboration is working. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Well, I was wondering if staff would consider this piece of advice to address the issue that has been raised. If no, what other means will you be using? Thank you.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, to Steve, it is not acceptable, absolutely, to be articulating to a family that they are not able to attend the school. This is a central tenet of part of our communications and training. When regrettably those statements occur, please let the supervisory officer know, depending upon, you need to follow the parent procedure reporting protocol so that that it can be handled appropriately. But please be rest assured it is not acceptable, and we emphasize that with our teams. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I recognize Melissa as the last member for this item.
Thank you. I'll try to be fast. And as a point of order, if I have any extra time, I yield it back to David. I just wanted to say I really appreciate and thank you very much for these suggestions about collaboration and input and building priorities and plans. So I agree with all of the big brush strokes. On a more specific note, and this might be implied in what you said, I would just offer a couple of questions. One would be, I hope that we're not limiting it to only 3 main items because, as you said, it's so complicated. So I could understand that we might have some main themes with related sub-themes underneath, but I think we would spend so long trying to distill into just 3 points, it may not be possible. Another thing I really like about the structure is allowing very many people to provide input who may not be able to in a meeting, and to help facilitate this may have been built in already. could we have some suggestion questions, almost like your leading questions, circulated in advance for people to think about and go back? And then could we have some mechanisms for people to be thoughtful and put together some feedback, whether it's in Google Docs, or maybe we have silos where we lump comments related to certain themes as they emerge to help move us along. And then another comment or suggestion I would just have is, I'm not sure if you were suggesting this should all happen, for example, in a SEAC meeting, which I think is just too ambitious and kind of impossible without a lot of pre-work to organize or have some input or something. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I know that our meetings are very, very busy and loaded. So I wouldn't want this very valuable but very rich and new and complex process to be shortchanged because we run out of time and just have to dump something in a document without people feeling they could contribute. Something to think about. I don't know what the answers are.
Thank you, and through the chair.
No, thank you. Is the end, and what I would suggest now, it is you please, in addition to what you wanted to say, to wrap up on this, if you can share with us, some of the milestones and timeline on how we'll get to an action plan, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, we would be very pleased to create a file in our new Google Doc with prompts and a repository for individuals should they choose to upload, absolutely to help the facilitation. So we can add that to the action log, Chair, that will make those files available in our new Google space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think I had I have 6 seconds left.
Sorry.
No, we're
Sorry.
hit our time for this agenda item. So the
Sorry.
timer went off a minute ago. So we need to move on.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think, sorry that we kind of make sure that we don't. Okay. Now we're looking forward to the action plan, and the next is trustee report.
I only have one item, and I will get Leanne to email it later. And that's just a heads up that the board will be, we're changing up the budget process this year. And so I know that the budget working group was not really, it only had 2 members, and they weren't really having regular meetings last year, but the budget process is going to occur much earlier this year. Staff are developing a calendar. It still has to go to the board for approval. So once it's approved, I'll share it with SEAC. But the plan for this year is to produce a needs-based budget ahead of the province announcing the GSNs. So we've been hampered the last number of years with this government. We never know when the budget is going, or the GSNs are going to be released. We don't know what kind of money we're going to get. And it makes for a lot of last-minute scrambling, which is frustrating and makes it difficult for both the board and our staff. And so we're just going to be more proactive. So the plan is for final approval of the budget, of our Tdsb budget, before the end of March, instead of going to the last minute in June. So the consultation process will happen earlier. So I just want to give SEAC a heads up because you do consult on the budget. As I said, the budget working group, well, it was Jean Paul and Richard last year, and that was it. And so we would encourage members to sign up for the working group and so that we can work together a bit earlier this year on what's going to go into that budget.
Okay, thank you. Any question, comment for Michelle? I see none. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Michelle. And that is Leo, or is it Leo and Julie, or only Leo?
Just me today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For it. Autism issue on school transfer.
Thanks, Chair. So good evening, everyone. I would like to bring an important matter to our attention that affects the well-being and educational experience of a significant group of students within our board. I'm going to present my reasoning in 3 short parts, and I'll respect the time that was allotted. So first of all, the issue at hand. We gather here today to discuss a concern related to students with specifically those enrolled in ISPs, intensive support programs. We have research and clinical findings that emphasize the significance of stability and routine for all students with diverse learning needs. But it has come to our attention through the parents that we represent at Autism Ontario that many of our autistic students in ISPs face frequent transfers between schools, which disrupt their learning experiences, social relationships, and emotional well-being. Upon discussion with other SEAC member organizations since May, it came to our attention that this is not only the case for autistic students, but it happens across the board in ISPs. I have heard far too many stories of students who have been through 4, 5, even 6 schools throughout their school career. So the impact on students, my second point. The unique challenges faced by these students, such as difficulties with social interaction and transitions, amplify the need for consistency in educational and social settings. Frequent changes of schools as major transitions have been shown in numerous studies to lead to increased stress, anxiety, and regression in increased skills among students in ISPs. These unintended consequences hinder their ability to flourish academically and impede their capacity to build and sustain relationships. It is vital that we recognize the fundamental needs of students in ISPs and ensure that their educational environments provide the stability and continuity they require. By doing so, we can create an inclusive and equitable education system that supports their well-being. So my ask of everyone today, before I conclude, I understand the importance of respecting the chair and the time allocated for today's meeting. So as such, I propose that we dedicate at least 20 minutes on the agenda of our next SEAC meeting to address this thoroughly. That will give the staff an opportunity to present the reasoning behind current practices affecting students in ISPs and allow for a discussion. However, Mr. Chair, if you believe there is sufficient time today for this discussion, I welcome the opportunity to delve into this matter immediately, since it's been delayed since May, in which case I would be most grateful. The importance and urgency of the topic justify giving it prompt attention, and this is something that we have been hearing from families, whether today or at our next scheduled meeting. And following the discussion, we can then consider our next steps, which may include a motion, which has been under discussion among members since May. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. Thanks for Autism Ontario patients. I want to give the floor to staff, to whether acknowledge this issue that Autism Ontario has brought up.
Thank you. So we can go back and get specific data, Leo, but I do know, coming from a different board to the TDSB, we do have different groupings of grades in the TDSB, and so even I'm not used to that many transitions. So we have schools that are K to 5, we have some schools that are 6 to 8, and of course then they go to secondary. So depending on which school students go to, they may have for the ISPs, they may have more transitions, but certainly we can look into that. However, we don't just move. Consistency is important for us as well, because we want to do what's best for the students, and we limit transitions as much as we can. So we would not be plucking a student out of an ISP to move them to another ISP. The only other way that, and we haven't done any, last year was the year before when I first started, is if we have ISPs that are not viable, so they have, let's say the cap for an ISP is 10, and that class has 3 students, we don't keep that, so we would merge it with another ISP. But again, that's very rare. But the one thing that I can think of right off the top of my head is that we have these K to 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9th grade to 12th grade. So right away there you see that there are 3, and maybe we add another one if the student was in a diagnostic kindergarten class, then they're going from a DK to a primary possibly at another school, if that school that they did their DK and didn't have that program, whatever it is. So, but I will certainly look into that with staff and can come back at the October meeting with some more information.
Okay. Thank you, Nandi. Thank you, Leo. I think that is what we're taking as an action item here is that, staff will be coming back in October with, TDSB actual pictures for all this autistic student transfer. Is that a fair next step? Go ahead.
No, absolutely. That's very helpful. If I can just top up, it would be very helpful for us to understand like the decision-making process, right? As to when like transfers happen. Because like there are geographic criteria that you use, right, for placements. And then there are other criteria. So something that has been under discussion that we've are wondering if how it works is for example, the geography, from what I understand, and this is what we're looking to understand from you, is apparently trumps everything else, right? So if you have a child in an ISP that has a certain stability, but then you have a new student in that area that has a geographical precedent, that student might take precedent over one which is already in that classroom or not.
No, no,
Right?
never.
So those are the
Never.
things. Yeah,
No.
just an example of the kinds of things that we're trying to understand, right? Like how do you determine when to transfer or not, right? Because what we have now is anecdotal data, right? We don't have the
Leo,
data.
if
But
you could share that data with us, that
Yeah.
would be really helpful as well. If you could share the
Yeah.
anecdotal data that you do have, but please rest assured that no, we don't take a student out of an ISP to create a spot for another student. We
it's
wouldn't.
mostly anecdotal, but it's just families saying that, by the time that they complete the TDSB and the kid's graduating, that kid has been through 8 schools, right? 6 schools, 7 schools, and it's like super common. Like even
Yeah, if you could share that with us, that would be really great. But I'm not aware right off the top of my head of that many transitions. But in a scenario that I just explained to you, you could see how they're already for that specific student. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the time is out for this item. I mean, to wrap up, Leo, you will be sharing, some information with staff on this through Lian, please. Send it to Lian.
Yes.
She will make sure that, staff, senior staff has it.
Okay.
And we'll have an follow-up agenda item in October to have further discussion to see what our next step, to address this issue. Thank you, Leo, and thank you to Tuzo Monterio. The next item will be is a roundtable, association and community updates. We have 15 minutes. Any working group that would like to begin? It is effective or special education? Because
I actually have 3 working group updates, but I'll be
3.
fast. They're all
No,
short.
that's why I was asking, is it Sept or effective?
Both and one more, but they're all fast.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start with the new one. I just was
What's the new one, please?
I'm about to say.
Sorry.
We just heard from the associate director about having action plans. And the thing I just want to add in my comments is when we started the working groups a number of years ago, we had an action plan working group, which I was on. It operated for a couple of years. It sort of fell off. It occurred to me there's going to need to be a lot of work, I think, organizing and putting together all the feedback. And we might want to think about having an action plan working group of a few or a handful of people.
For that one, sorry, please, for that one, we haven't created it. Let us park it for now and provide update for the 2. Sorry.
Yes.
Provide update for what we know. Sorry.
We had a group, it's dormant.
We
I'm
had
saying it may
historically,
be
but
helpful.
at the beginning of year, I'm sorry, we had provide update on the special education working group and effective practice working group. We have, it is time. We don't want to add something that we don't, sorry.
Yes, so maybe you can tell me when that suggestion could be made, but I feel I've made it. Anybody interested could sign up or send me an email or send Leanne.
Because until we form it, it's not yet a working group. Let us provide update on the working group that we have now. Sorry.
Okay, the next one, Special Education Plan Working Group, SCP. We attempted valiantly to have a meeting of our working group before this SEAC meeting. We couldn't coordinate our schedules. We will be meeting soon. We really invite anybody who would like to participate, whether you have a lot of experience or not, to join us. And this year we'll be discussing and we'll roll out a different way of SEAC to provide input into the special education plan. So stay tuned.
And please, can staff confirm who is, can Louise or Nandy confirm the staff support for the special education working group? A special education plan working group?
We have Elizabeth and she's fabulous. I hope she'll stick with us.
Okay, please coordinate to make sure that, it is, thank you.
We really appreciate staff who help the working groups. Yay, Elizabeth, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the other one, Effective Practices Working Group. Kirsten wanted to give an update. She could not be here, so she asked me to just give a brief update in her place. She had sent an email September 13th with some information in it. I would refer people back to that. One item that has developed and changed since she sent her email is we've received additional information from Trustee Arts about very recent changes in the Tdsb process for how feedback is given to trustees. And there are some concerns that we'll be addressing in our next Effective Practices Working Group meeting, and we'll come back to SEAC on just concerns about being sure that SEAC and other CAC items of importance are presented to trustees in the way that trustees can receive the most information. So I guess just stay tuned on that. And that is the update.
I'm turning to the staff. Who is sitting there as staff support?
If I may, through you, Chair, from staff's perspective, I would suggest the creation of working groups is something that is outlined and discussed by membership and to include in the terms of reference. There have been instances where working groups have been established that staff have not been members of or aware of. So again, collaboration to be aware of what working groups are established, how they're connected with the goals of SEAC and staff, so that we are able to provide you the necessary support so that communication flows both ways. So I don't believe for this working group there is a staff member. Thank you.
I think that's something that we need to correct. We need staff member support for all the working groups that we have. No, I'm not asking you to respond, Melissa, sorry. And that is something that we need to address. And to make sure that, because it is something, the collaboration that we kind of, we have been talking about. And please, staff, you figure out, who, what's on staff, any staff member that will kind of have to support this effective practice working group. Is it possible to look into it and to tell us next meeting so that when the working group meets, it is sure that, staff is there, to make sure that this is, because it's a TDSP, working group of a SEAC, a TDSP SEAC.
Through you, Chair, if we may, we're going to need to take that under advisement to consider. And the query that I would have for the development of the terms of reference, if the suggestion is to have a terms of reference working group, how is that different? Is it unique than an effective practices working group? So I think that those would be points for consideration.
Let us bring this, term of reference item in October and revamp and bring all these working groups in to see how they will align. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that will be, an action item, the terms of reference for next, and to make sure that we all have this, the same understanding of all the pieces, that make up SEAC. Any other comment for your two updates, Melissa? Any other, thing that you wanted to add for the updates on these two working groups?
I would just say that we really appreciate staff's time. We know it's very limited, and some groups probably really need more staff help than others. So I agree with the Associate Director. It would probably be helpful to take this offline and see what would work. I think that there is freedom of association, and if some reps want to get together and try to work on stuff, that's great. I wouldn't necessarily impose on staff. I do think terms of reference is an area that's newly emerging. We might figure out how we deal with all of that, but I would just say it's a volunteer organization, and we should probably appreciate any work that anyone's willing to do on anything and not put too many constraints on it, would be my perspective.
Okay, I think that's because we already have an, agenda item, term of reference / all the working group to see how they all align in October. We'll, set some time, to have the conversation there. Okay, thank you. Any other comment, last comment? Okay, thank you. And I recognize David who wanted to ask any question.
Hey there, thank you. Really quick, for the kindergarten to grade 12 Standards Development Committee Working Group, we've been dormant for months, and I'm in part to blame, probably largely to blame, maybe totally to blame, but I want to kickstart it. And because we have a lot of new members, in a sentence, a joint committee of people with disabilities and school boards submitted a report to the government almost 2 years ago with detailed recommendations on how to make our education system inclusive, accessible, barrier-free for students with disabilities. And we were established by SEAC, by a motion of SEAC, and I'm chairing it to talk about what TDSB, and advise on what TDSB could do. Anybody who's interested, please just flip a note to Leanne. I'm going to reach out to Leanne after this meeting to see if we can schedule a meeting. We did have staff assigned, and unfortunately the staff who were assigned have gone on to other jobs in other places. So it would be great if we could leave with Louise and Andy to figure out who, and then we can get to work and get back to you with some helpful advice. And on the world of barrier-free, I'm going to ask that as we're developing these new initiatives to make our committee meetings more efficient, that we make sure they're accessible. I did not know there was a timer until my time ran out last time around. So I don't have the advantage of that. I would appreciate it if we could make sure what we use is accessible. Thanks. Back to you, John Paul.
Sorry, I'm just going to clarify for David and others that, so normally SEAC, according to Leanne, who is the keeper of all knowledge for the committee, SEAC normally reinstates the working groups each year. So the two standing working groups are the budget and the special education plan working groups. The others are ad hoc and need to be reestablished each year. We didn't include that or that wasn't included in the agenda for today. So may I suggest?
I'm respectfully, that's the first I've ever heard of it, and I've been on this committee for about 8 years. So we were a work in progress. We made some proposals. I tried to get some meetings going at certain points. I don't think we should have to justify our existence.
No, it's not. It's not that. We just that should be an agenda item for next month. But Leanne has set up signups, and I know she has sent out emails more than once about inviting people to join working groups. And so my understanding is people are not signing up or replying. So there are signups within the Google Drive, and then I'll put that down as a note for the agenda list for October. For that.
And I'm also going to ask if we could have an alternative track, just because Google Drive creates accessibility problems too.
I think that is something that I need to, maybe it is a little kind of confusion here. There is a calendar year and a school year. And I think all these working groups, if we go back, I think in January, we established all these working groups for the calendar year. Yes, we established them. I think that is the calendar year. I mean, the little, kind of what makes the confusion here, that's one I want to clarify. The calendar year in January, we established all these working groups. You may recall that we even had a PRCR working group and so on, the ADHD and the budget and financial statement working group, because we combine with all the, if we look at the report, CR report, then we'll see the list there. I think that is a good correction that I wanted to make. And now, because we're going through this term of reference, kind of refresh, exercise, we need to look into all this working group, and we may question some of them, and to say that, and to make sure that we have assigned staff for all of them. If not possible, we will prioritize. That is the clarification that I wanted to make. Please, the norm is that one item, only one question for each of these items. It does, the ADHD working group has anything to say?
The chair isn't.
Hi. Yeah, sorry. Hi, I'm right here. No, we don't have any updates at this moment. To be honest, I've been a little bit overwhelmed with all of the emails and different issues arising over the past week. So I haven't been on my own game to set up a meeting. And I know the most important thing to us right now is following up on the resource that, like the resources for the TDSB website, the ADHD resources. We submitted that document sort of at the end of last year. And I know, Nandy, you sort of gave us the rough saying that November maybe to follow up. So that's kind of what's in my mind. That's a very important thing. But other than that, there's no updates right now. To be honest, just trying to get my mind together and around what's happening here. Thank you.
Thank you. And the budget and financial statement, Richard.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Basically, I think you've covered that already, that there is no updates, and look forward to receiving the new procedure for the budget going forward and how we can participate as a working group and as a SEAC on providing budget recommendations and advice. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for that. I think these are all the working group that we have now. And as I said, we're going through this action planning with staff and including the term of reference next month. Stay tuned on that. That will include all the working groups, and we go through to make sure that there's staff, assigned for all this working group, and to ensure alignment with what the board is doing, with some of the challenge that we kind of identifying through our involvement with the system. Thank you. Yeah, he was there too. That's the association. Yeah. I know. Okay. Yeah. The only working with. Yeah. Any update from association and community rep? David, any update? Steve, any update?
Hi, through you, Chair. No, other than just to share with everyone that Epilepsy Toronto did move their offices to a new location, and they are finally starting to do in-person support services. But also to share that the online support services they provided went over very, very well over the last year or so with a lot of members, because it allowed them to meet other members in a social activity and not have to travel to one location. For people with epilepsy, traveling on transit and can be a challenge, especially if their seizures are unpredictable. It leads to a lot of hassles with paramedics, et cetera, et cetera. So the services went over really well. Busker Fest went well at the end of the season, and yeah, that's what we have so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. ABC, any update? Integrated, any update from you, Nora? Afrocentric, any update? Yes, Nora.
So Inclusion Action in Ontario's update would be that we have started to have an approaching pack on SEAC because we have concerns about how many students are not attending school. And so right now, our association's trying to pull together supports and reach out to other SEACs to start to investigate the different ways kids are excluded from school so that we have accurate data. There was a newspaper release in the Trillium that sort of highlighted the fact that the data is unreliable. And so since this is basically denying human rights, like fundamentally, it's like the bottom line, can a kid get into school? That would be a priority from our association.
Okay, thank you. Community living?
There's no updates for this meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Autism Ontario?
Yeah, we did circulate a few updates. I think the main one is to say that with back to school, there are a number of resources that Autism Ontario is providing on the website for parents to check and helping with the back to school. So you might want to check that out. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other association, community rep that would like to provide any update from the community or association?
Yes,
Rowan?
Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children. Is
Yes,
that okay?
Rowan, yeah, go ahead, please.
We do have an upcoming conference that I shared with the SEAC team coming up in October. And it's welcome to deaf and hard of hearing children. All families are welcome, as well as teachers of the deaf and educators to come and do their CEUs if they want to submit them for the year. If anyone wants any information, please feel free to reach out.
Okay, thank you, Rowan. And I think that is we had a chance to hear from those who had an update. And the next and last item is, we're welcoming our friend Leo as now the representative for Autism Ontario, moving from alternate to representative. Congrats, Leo, and welcome. And we unfortunately lost Jana. She resigned. She was a community rep. And those are the news that we have now. And we also received some letters from the Waterloo Region District School Board, and also from the Dauphin Peel District School Board. Other business, yeah? Now, other business, Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, okay. From Leanne has asked me to update everyone that staff will be offering onboarding and training at the next, ahead of the next board meeting. So at 6 p.m., sorry, not ahead of the next board meeting. Staff will be offering onboarding and training ahead of the next SEAC meeting, starting at 6 p.m. in the boardroom and on virtual. Please send Leanne your questions or suggested topics for the onboarding. And so she mentioned things like preparing a motion for the committee to go for a board recommendation. Also, the new shared Google Drive. Staff will be able to go through the resources and the where documents will be stored and how requests for information will be posted to the drive, and it'll be one convenient location for everyone to access documents. And that was that. Was there other?
Okay. Thank you, Liane, and thank you, Michelle. I think that is, please, let us all, make time prior to October meeting, to attend this orientation and a walkthrough to, the new Google Drive for SEAC. This is really important. And the next meeting will be October 16. And in this same room. It's always good to see everyone in person when you can. And having a training in person, will also be good. Any last question, comment before we adjourn? Any comment coming from staff? Yeah, I recognize
Thank you.
Louise, yeah?
I defer to Steve, but I just wanted to express gratitude to the committee and welcome back to school. We are thrilled to be supporting our students this September. They're so keenly present with us, and we look for a successful year. We certainly are aware that there are some students who are not yet present in our classes and are working diligently to make sure their welcome is warm and safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. I saw a hand up. Who raised their hand?
Yeah, it's Steve. Through you, Chair. One last comment. Can we please have someone from the IT services section of the board test thoroughly the Google Drive and its accessibility for those who have communication challenges, vision for one, because it is notorious that we get stuff that is supposedly AODA compliant, but is not actually effective. So I just please, we're a special ed committee. There should never be a reason that something is inaccessible to any of our members. That's all I want to say. And thank you so much, everyone, for tonight.
Well, thank you. Anyone moving to adjourn the meeting? Thank you, Melissa. Second, I see Steve. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
And see you on October 16, 6 p.m. for the training. Elian, 6 p.m. in this room, right? See you on October 16th, 6 p.m. for the training. Thank you.
I will now shut off all the microphones.